Hello everyone, this is Isha and I hope you're all having a wonderful day. Today I'm sharing stitched and swing theme inspired cards with lots of layering, stencil techniques and beautiful texture details. I created two cards using products from the newest release, and I'll be sharing some simple tips along the way that make these card designs easy and fun to recreate. Make sure you stay till the end because I'll show you all four finished cards using the new release and some close up details. You don't want to miss that. I'm working with several products from the Stitched Edit collection. First, I'm using Stitched Edit Maker's Essential Set. This includes layering stencils and coordinating dies. The stencil set has three layers of stencils that color the images beautifully. And once you die cut them, you get clean edges without any white borders, which gives a really polished finish. Next, I used the Stitched Edit Thread Spool set. For this one, I worked only with the stencils and coordinating dies and skipped the stamp set. The stencil layers include a solid rectangular section that makes it very easy to color and the threaded areas. For the sentiment, I used the Handmade Details stamp set, specifically the Made with Love sentiment, along with some of the tiny decorative images for the spools. Another set I used is the Stitched Edit Notion story. This is again a stencil and die combo. From this set, I focused mainly on the thread details and chose not to use the button elements for my card. To add delicate texture and elegance, I used the Heritage Lace dies. This set includes multiple intricate lace designs that layer beautifully. I paired these with the petal trellis cover plate, the nested oval double stitch dies, and the elongated nested oval dies. For additional background texture, I also used the lacy-lattice-coverplate-die. To finish the cards, I added iridescent dewdrops for subtle shine and dimension. I also created two additional cards using the freshly picked product suite. I used the stamp set along with the coordinating dies. This suit also includes a press plate, but for today's cards, I didn't use the press plate. I focused on using the layering stencils to color the stamped images. I paired these frames with the Room for Joy stamp and die set from the new release. For the card that was part of my Instagram hop, I stamped and embossed the frames and die cut them. I layered it with a deep red frame. I added some details to the background with the petal mosaic stencil and heritage lace die to create layered texture. For the final card, which was part of the blog hop, I created layered frame elements and used the basket weave cover plate for the background. All the supplies I used in today's video are listed in the description box below, so be sure to check them out. Alright, let's jump in. To begin, I die cut a white panel using the lacy lattice cover plate. Once it's cut, I set that aside for later. Next, I grabbed another white panel and started ink blending. I used peach fuzz ink and blended it softly from the edges towards the center. Then I added peony ink around the edges to create a warm coral blend. This simple two color blend gives a really soft and elegant background. Now comes the fun part, building the stitched elements. I die cut several spools from white cardstock. And a quick tip here, if you're unsure how many pieces you'll need, cut some extra. It gives you flexibility later when designing your layout. For coloring, I use the layering stencils from the Maker's Essentials set. I'm using stencil number 1 and blending peach fuzz onto the floss and needle areas. I'm also adding some peony ink for creating that soft coral color, which we did before for the background panel. These dies have etched stitching lines, which means once you die cut them, you automatically get beautiful texture. So, no need to work a lot, but the end result is beautiful. For the next spool, I blended mimosa ink around the edges to add depth. Then, for another color combo, I used mint ink as my base color and deepened the edges using meadow ink. I love this color. Keep the ink to the edges. I like to blend inks softly and with a light, starting with a light pressure. But what do you like? Do you like to layer colors slowly, or do you like the really contrast, bold, vibrant colors? To create even more dimension, I added a touch of Emerald City ink only along the outer edges. Once I was happy with the colors, I die cut everything using the coordinating dies. The small alignment triangles on these products make lining everything up so super easy. I'm using the dual tip tool to remove the delicate flaws from the die cut piece. Now, here is a trick I love using. I place the spools back into their negative die cut pieces. This hold them in place while adding additional color with stencils. I'm using the Notion Story stencil here. This step helps keep everything neat and prevent slipping. I use Mimosa ink and Emerald City inks to the spools. I always use masks or post-it paper uh, while stenciling so that I don't contaminate the colors. But are you team masking, or you don't use masking paper and just go freehand? Moving on, I colored additional sewing elements using the Maker's Essential stencils. I'm using stencil number 1 here, and I'm using citron, mimosa, and mint inks for various pieces like the measuring tape, pin cushion, and thread details. Next, I'm skipping the stencil number 2 here, and we will use it later. For images on stencil number 3, I'm starting by mint ink to the tape. Then to the pincushion, I'm adding raspberry bliss ink and candy apple ink. Keep wiping the stencil in between so we won't contaminate the colors. To the thread spool, I'm using mimosa ink. For the scissors, I blended citron ink starting from the edges to give them a warm metallic look. Fade it to the center of the image so we get some dimension. Finally, for the embroidery floss, I'm using mimosa ink again. Now we are using stencil number 2. For the tape, I'm using mint ink. Then for the scissors, metal needle, and pin details, I added warm buff ink for a soft, realistic finish. Finally, I'm using Raspberry Bliss ink to the pincushion, and I'm starting to blend from the edges. Then I'm adding some candy apple ink to mute the brightness of the pink ink. And then finally, to the lightest areas, I am using peony ink. Once everything was colored, I die cut all the elements using the dies. And then I started building my cluster. I die cut a vellum, elongated oval, and softly blended ink around the edges. I wanted to add something extra to the spools, so I put them back in the negative die cut piece and then stamped them with some of the images from the heart made detail stamp set. I felt the need to add more dimension to the floss and spools. So for the greens, I added meadow ink and emerald city inks. For the orange, I'm adding mango sorbet inks. I'm sponging only towards the edges so we get again the 3D dimension look. This brightens the images instantly and make a big impact to the finished project. Here I'm adding the floss to the spools using 3D foam tape. I arrange the spools, thread, and sewing tools until I like the layout. Now, playing around with all the elements of the cluster is quite fun. I also added sparkle to the needle and pin using glitter pen. Such a small detail, but it really makes the design pop. I stamped the made with love sentiment and added a thin strip of glitter cardstock underneath it. This is just for that little shine. I'm adding leftover ink from the orange brush to the sentiment to blend it a bit with the card. I am adding liquid glue to the vellum oval behind the images so the glue won't see through and adhere it to the card. To finish this card, I added some iridescent dewdrops. I like placing them in small clusters because it creates movement across the card. And our card number 1 is complete with gorgeous details. Moving on to the second card, which is lace layered spool card. I wanted something soft and elegant with a lot of layered texture but not quite bulky. I started by dry embossing white cardstock using the petal trellis cover plate. This gives a lovely stitched look that adds beautiful dimension. Then I lightly ink blended peony ink around the edges and added sparkling rose ink to create a soft coral glow. You can change the colors a little bit by adding another color to it, and then you can make your own color combinations. Next, I die cut two of the heritage lace panels. These lace dies are perfectly sized for A2 cards, which makes them super easy to use. Now, here I'm removing the small cut pieces using the dual tip tool. I also die cut two smaller lace pieces and lightly ink blend them with peony ink to create layered texture without making the card feel very heavy. I'm adhering the panel to a white card base. Here you can see the details of the background panel. Off camera, I die cut a vellum oval using the double stitched oval dies. At this point, all my elements are ready and I'm ready to arrange them in a cluster. I added the floss through the spool slits, which adds a really realistic stitched detail. I added mimosa ink to the spool edges to tie the colors together and build another stitched cluster using the similar elements as before. Again, I added glitter pen details to the metal pieces and arranged everything until I was happy with the composition. Actually, this part is fun like a kid playing with their toys. Do you enjoy using vellum in your card designs? I love vellum. And actually, I used to do parchment crafts. So it's like I have a special connection with vellum. To keep the vellum adhesive hidden, I only applied glue behind the images before attaching the cluster to the card. Finally, I layered broad lace pieces along the two sides of the card. Now, here I'm layering the finer lace on the top of the lace we adhered before to create layers and still keeping the design clean. Next is the sentiment. So I'm attaching the sentiment using foam tape. Of course, I finished the card with more iridescent dewdrops. I love them. And here are our all four finished cards. I love how these designs combine stitching details, soft ink blending, and layered textures while still keeping everything clean and balanced. Here are some more close up photos of the cards for you to enjoy. And that brings us to the end of this video. I would love to know which card is your favorite. Is it the stitched spool clusters or the framed freshly picked designs? Actually, the freshly picked design reminds me of jams, marmalades. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. I always love hearing from you. Please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. It really helps support my channel and lets me know you enjoy this type of content. If you're new here, welcome. I share card making inspiration, techniques, and product ideas regularly. So make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on any future videos. All the supplies I used are listed in the description box below, so feel free to check them out if you want to recreate these cards. If you decide to buy through my affiliate links, I get a small commission on that at no extra cost to you, and I appreciate that a lot. Thanks so much for spending time crafting with me today. I truly appreciate you being here, and I will see you in the next video. Happy crafting and bye bye.